Hello everyone. A couple of weeks ago I was asked a question about Crackle mediums and asked to make some recommendations about which products to use. Now anybody who's followed me for a long time will know that the Crackle technique is something that I have struggled with, going back to the days when we were doing it with mixed medium morsels, which must be 3 or 4 years ago, and I know that many of you have struggled or still are struggling with it too, so hopefully this video will be of some help. I'm going to try 5 different products to try and get a Crackle look. I'm going to try 3 branded products, which are the Docrafts Artiste all-purpose acrylic paint Crackle medium. I'm also going to try 2 Decoart media products, the Crackle Glaze and the Crackle paste. The Crackle paste is much thicker than the glaze. And I'm also going to try 2 household products as well. I'm going to try it with PVA Glue and Podge Matte. And so let's have a go and see what we can achieve, see how we get on. So first of all, I'm going to try the Docrafts Artiste, and I'm going to follow the instructions. The instructions on all of these are slightly different. So this one says apply a thick coat of acrylic paint followed by a thick coat of the Crackle medium and finish with another coat of acrylic paint and heat set to encourage the crackling. Now I've always been told that you get better cracks by drying it naturally, but you know, let's do what they say and see how we get on. So it's the acrylic paint first. I'm going to use Docrafts acrylic paint. Now this is just a piece of cereal box that's had a coat of gesso. So here we go, let's add some acrylic paint first. There we go. So a thick coat of acrylic paint. So we'll do that. And you can see that I'm applying this with a brush. So that's a thick coat of acrylic paint, I think. I mean, how thick is thick? So let me just pop that to one side, put the lid on so that I don't spill it, followed by a thick coat of the medium. So whoops, let's do that. So I've got another brush here. So let's apply a thick coat of the medium. And then it says a thick coat of the paint. So let's put another coat of paint on. Now, from the experience and the struggles that I had in the past, in fact, let me just pour some over here. The best thing to do is to just wipe it over without mingling the product. So you're just really lightly going over the medium so that you don't mingle the two together like this. There we go, that should do that. So I'm just going to clean up my brushes and then I'm going to give this a dry with my heat tool. I'm just going to put my heat tool on low and I'm going to hold it at a distance and I'm just going to wiggle it around, because the trouble is if you hold it in one place your paint will just bubble. But I've got a feeling that this probably isn't going to do much and that I'm just going to have to set it to one side and see what happens if we let it dry naturally. Drying this for a couple of minutes and there is no sign of any cracking at all, and the paint in the middle is starting to dry, so I'm just going to set this off to one side now and just let the rest of it dry naturally, and we'll see what we end up with. That's sitting off to dry. I'm going to try the Crackle Glaze, the Decoart Media Crackle Glaze. Now it says here water-based fast drying top coat that creates eggshell crackling pattern as it air dries. Acid-free instructions. Apply heavy coat with brush over sealed surface. Glaze self-levels, so do not overbrush as this may prevent cracking. Size of cracks will vary based on thickness of application. Once dried, cracks can be enhanced by using media antiquing cream. Right, okay, so let's apply some of this. Now again, this is just a piece of cereal box that I've given a coat of Payne's Grey paint and I've dried this. So let's apply a thick layer of let's apply a thick layer of this Crackle glaze and see what happens. This is really thick. It's like a really thick varnish. Oh. My gosh, that is really, really thick. So I'm just going to pop that to one side and just let it air dry. And again, we'll see what happens. Whilst that glaze is drying, let's try the Crackle paste. Now it says here that you can either apply this through a stencil or on your own using a palette knife. Oh, let me just unscrew that over the bin. I've had these for quite a while. But let's try this. So I'm going to use a palette knife and let's just take a good amount out. And again, I've got my Artiste trading card. That's a piece of packaging. And I think I'm going to go thick to thin. And might need a bit more than that. And let's see what happens. And again, I'm just going to have to set this to one side and just let it do its thing. Let me just use a wider spatula so that I can get a nice fine finish. Right, so I'm going to set that to one side. I've got some regular PVA craft glue in a ramekin dish here. I've got another Artiste trading card that's had a coat of gesso. This is just cereal box. It's had a coat of gesso followed by a coat of acrylic paint in Payne's grey again, and I'm just going to apply some of this PVA glue. So I want quite a thick layer, and we'll see if this works. I can remember Amy Johnson doing a video for me when we were doing mixed media morsels when I was having no luck at all with this technique, and I'm going to leave the link to Amy's video in the description box below because it's a great one for showing you how to do this with PVA school glue. So we'll put quite a thick layer on, so I just want to make sure that that's nice and even. There we go. And then I'm just going to rinse off my brush and just dry that on a piece of kitchen towel. There we go. And again, I'm just going to use some of the Docrafts Artiste paint. So I'm just going to do how Amy showed me how to do it, which was to put a thick layer across the top like that, and then I'm just going to, here we go, see if you can see this. I'm just going to drag it down, and she says that, you know, it's important not to get this to mingle with the paint. You're just dragging it over the top without messing about with it too much. So like this, and then I'll turn it around the other way and we'll. You don't want the glue and the paint to mingle. So again, I'm just going to set that to one side and we'll see what happens. And then finally, my last experiment, I've got another piece of cereal box here that's had a coat of gesso and a coat of Payne's grey acrylic paint. And this time I'm just going to use Podge Matte. So again, I'm just going to put a thick coat of the Mod Podge on the background like this, maybe a bit more. I think you need quite a thick layer, not too thick because otherwise it would just take forever to dry. So that will do. And whilst I go and rinse my brush, I shall then be back to give it a coat of paint. Let's add some of the acrylic paint. So this has had, you know, a minute to just dry. So we'll add some paint. There we go. And I've marked this one Mod Podge just so that I know which one's which. And again, I'm going to do the same thing and just gently drag this over the top of the Mod Podge, and we'll see if we end up with any kind of crackles. And I think I'll add a bit more down here where it's not quite as thick. Oh, there we go. So again, just trying not to mess with it too much, because you don't want the glue and the paint to blend together. And I'm just going to set that off to one side to dry. This is the first one I did, the Docrafts Artiste, and it's been drying for about half an hour. Now I did end up taking the heat tool to it again because there were just no signs of any cracks at all. So it's more or less dry now, almost completely, and you can see a little bit of cracking here, but nothing to write home about. So let's have a look at the others. The Decoart Crackle Glaze, and I don't know whether you can see, this has been drying for about half an hour, and already I can see crackling just on the edges. I can see it here and I can see it here as well, so I think that one is going to crackle nicely. Here is the Decoart Crackle Paste, and again you can see slight cracking just around the edges, especially on this side here, so I've got high hopes for that one there. This is the one that I did with school glue, well, just PVA craft glue, and look, you know, that one's working really nicely as well. And then finally, this is the one that I did with Mod Podge, and because the paint that I applied on top of the Mod Podge was so thick, this is taking much longer to dry. And of course this was the one that I did last as well, but you can see I've got some nice cracking going on around the edge. So next up I'll show you what they look like once they're completely dry. It's about 6 hours later, and everything has had a chance to dry, so let's have a look at the results. This is the first one I did, so this was the Docrafts Artiste Crackle Medium, and you can see that that one hasn't changed from the last time I showed you, which was half an hour after I'd started. Of course this one was dried with the heat tool as per the instructions on the back of the packet. To be fair to the product, I did try it drying naturally, because that's what I've done with all of the others, and you can see here that I have got some signs of crackle, but the others have outperformed this by an absolute mile. I also tried it by just adding the glaze and then a layer of paint, and again I've got more crackle doing it that way. So this was the same method that I did with the Mod Podge and the PVA glue, but none of these are a huge success. Next up was the Decoart Media Crackle Glaze, and look at this. I mean, you know, I've got wonderful crackle on this one here. Let me just hold it up and move it around, and I think if I put a coat of white paint over this and then rubbed it off so that the white sank into the cracks, that you'd be able to see that a lot better, and it would be a wonderful effect. So that one gets a big thumbs up from me. Of course, I tried the Decoart Media Crackle Paste. Now this is much thicker, and you can see here that it's just completely warped the cardstock that I was working on. I was just working on cereal box that had been coated in gesso and a layer of acrylic paint. I think that although the results are absolutely fantastic, you would need to work on quite a thick piece of chipboard to avoid any warping, but you can see what wonderful results you achieve from the Decoart Media Crackle Paste. That was the PVA craft glue, so this one here, just regular craft glue, and just look at the crackle that I've achieved on that. I mean, you know, let me just compare this to the Docrafts Artiste, and it's much better than any of these. Those are the two most successful ones with the Docrafts Artiste. So PVA glue has worked much better. And then finally, let me show you the Mod Podge. This is the one that I did with the Mod Podge Matte. And I think the results on that one there are just absolutely fantastic. Really like that. And if I compare that with the Decoart Crackle Glaze, so that one there, you can see here that the cracks are much bigger using the Crackle Glaze than they are with the Mod Podge, but you know, both I think have turned out really well. So if you've been wondering about crackle mediums and which ones to get, or whether to try it with PVA glue or whatever, then I hope this video has been helpful to you. I certainly found it a really helpful exercise, and I think that I have finally cracked the crackle, excuse the pun, myself. So I hope it's helped you make a decision, you know, whether to invest invest in a branded product or whether to just go ahead and use either PVA or Mod Podge. The one that I would not recommend really is the Docrafts Artiste. So I'll leave the details of the products that I used in the description box below in the order that I used them. And you know, if you found this helpful, as always, I'd really appreciate a thumbs up. And if you've got any questions or tips regarding Crackle mediums, then you know, do leave me a message in the comments below. So take care everyone, and I'll see you all again soon. Bye for now.